The worst horror movie I ever saw was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer and this is
John C. Myers.
And we are a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in popular and not so popular horror franchises. And today we are talking about Saw 6 from 2009. And most importantly, we have our first returning champion. He is an industrial musician, a dark jazz musician, a fellow fright boy, and the guy who did all of our music, Michael Arthur Holloway, returning. Say hello, Michael. Yeah.
Hi. Nice to be back. Well, I mean, kind of nice to be back. We are, after all, talking about Saw 6, so let me temper that statement a little.
Yeah, we got on the Zoom call, and Michael is currently strapped down to a chair. He's got a device around his head right now and a microphone in front of him, and, he's waking up.
I would have respected this podcast more if you had actually been able to pull off something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
That would feel appropriate to the series and to me guesting to do something crazy like that. What happened?
Well, I sent John the pig mask in the mail, and he just didn't bother to put it on and come to your house.
Here's the thing, is that you cherish your life, so I don't have to do that.
Touché.
So if you could just stop doing that, then it will work. And what that means could change. I could decide that you're no longer cherishing your life by the time this podcast has ended.
Yeah.
I mean, you did watch Saw 6, so maybe you don't cherish your life.
Right.
But
I was going to say, there's room for...
I mean, obviously not that much. I was up till 1 a.m. last night watching Saw 6 for the third time in my life.
So, so when we asked you if you had any preferences and to guest and come back, much like Phantasm, you picked Phantasm 2. What brought you around to Saw 6, being that Saw 6 is probably your favorite movie?
I wanted to do Saw 6 because I like it better than Saw Part 2, Saw Part 3, Saw Part 4, and Saw Part 5.
Okay, fair enough.
Which is, faint praise. I
Right.
don't like it better than Saw Part 1. I do like it better than Saw Part 7, 8, and 9. So that's my simple logic in making a choice on Saw.
You live or die, you made your choice. And, and you picked...
stuck your hand in a clamp and picked Saw 6.
Right. Fair enough. I mean, we watched a few of these when we were roommates, and then many years ago, and then I remember being in New York on a work trip, and you texted me that our other roommate at the time, another John, were barreling through all of these, and there was part of me that was a little bit jealous at the time.
Yeah.
And now I don't.
In like 2 or 3 nights, we watched them all. Of course, at the time, there was only 6 at the time. 6 was the most recent, and then 7 came out not long after that, and so then we watched that. But I remember you being a little jealous.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are watching Saw movies without me?
Yeah.
I always figured that's why you're doing it now on the show.
Yeah, that's why I started this podcast. Yeah, just because,
This was in envelope number 6. I was doing a whole podcast just to get you on.
Right. This is my long game. I decided back in 2010, sitting alone in a Brooklyn bar, doing something fun. And you guys are watching Saw.
How can I stop this?
Right. Anyway, this is the same creative team as Saw 4 and 5, at least the primary 2 writers, as John Myers pointed out 1 or 2 episodes ago. Dunstan has checked in to these Saw movies, and he's still around.
Yep, Dunstan and Melton.
But the director's like a previous editor of the first 5, right?
Exactly.
To step up to the director's seat.
See, dreams can come true, John.
That's true. Yeah. I've been proven wrong. This whole podcast I've been saying,
yes,
not possible.
You can go from an editor to a director.
So thank you, Kevin Gruter.
Let me guess. His previous work was mostly music videos.
They were mostly the other Saw movies, which in a way, I mean, they're certainly cut together like that. It's what if we made the 9 Inch Nails video for Closer, a movie?
Did you just say Closer? 9 Inch Nails Closer?
I did say Closer because it's about ABC. Always be closing.
I've never heard anyone call Closer.
Yeah, probably because that's not how it's pronounced, but I went with it.
Interestingly enough, this one only did 68 million at the box office, whereas all the others were up over 100 million. And I have to expect that even fans after Saw Part 5 were just like, I think I'm done with this, thus giving a 30% drop off in sales.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a Saw movie a year. up until this, how much steam could that have left in it?
Well, and they killed the villain in the third movie.
I mean, that's such a problem for this series.
We'll talk about it more later, I imagine, but I feel like this movie does a better job than the ones around it in keeping Tobin Bell front and center for decent chunks of it, even though he's dead.
Yeah.
Sorry for the spoilers, but that was 3 movies ago, so people better know.
Right. What? The only other thing that I found really interesting going into this, as far as like box office goes, but 2009 is the same year that the first Paranormal Activity movie came out. And Paranormal Activity definitely had a significant amount of like buzz around it, just like Saw 1 did. But I cannot think of a more divergent 2 styles of horror movies to come out in the same year to maybe divide audience a little bit than the slow, barely anything happening, some would call boring, I'm a little mixed on it, Paranormal Activity versus the incredibly visceral Saw franchise.
Yeah. There's also been a lot of knockoffs, a lot of like torture porn, other, also rans, like your Hostels and whatever. So, yeah. So there's also, we're approaching a sea change in what people want out of horror, which probably helped lessen the box office for this as well.
As you do in a Saw film, you start off with 1 or 2 people in a trap, and boy howdy, this, as far as opening traps go, this was up there. And
I agree.
Yeah,
I think this is probably the most memorable opening trap of all of them, frankly.
It's a nice return to form in terms of you're not sure what's going to happen, because by the time 4 has happened, 4 doesn't even open with the trap, and then 5 is the Shane Baxter trap where he dies, the Pit and the Pendulum trap. And since Jigsaw's out of the picture, you kind of are already going, well, he's not going to live through this, so who cares? But this is like, there's actually like, because there's 2 people involved, there seems like there might actually be some stakes.
So two people wake up and they are in a couple of cages. On a table in front of them is like a small knife, a meat cleaver, what would you call that? The little strap that holds blood down. I'm not a medic.
A tourniquet?
Tourniquet. There we go. Yeah. So Billy the puppet appears on a monitor and describes to them that their crimes that they are predatory lenders. Billy demands that they each give a pound of flesh, and there's a scale for them to put their flesh into, and whoever offers the most flesh will be allowed to live. So the guy is a little bit heavier set, so he just starts kind of carving on the side of him. There is a kind of a funny moment where she looks down and realizes she can't really go that route.
She actually looks down at her stomach, pulls her shirt up to show how like in great shape she is.
Exactly.
And it's really pretty funny because
I did laugh.
This is a joke, right? Like this is like... Sorry, I have a cat playing underneath my desk, so it might be some extra work for Myers on the audio on this one.
It's some cute work.
But I do love this. Like, damn, I'm in shape. This sucks.
Right.
What a time to be fit.
Yeah. Right. And then decides that she's going to hack off her arm. Interesting thing about that actress, Tenedra Howard, is she basically won that role in a VH1
Scream Queens,
which I did not know existed until I was reading about this. Because there's that other show with the drama or hour-long show, Scream Queens with like Jamie Lee Curtis or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was like a reality show competition thing, judged in part by Shawnee Smith.
Oh, fun!
And this person ended up winning, and the thing was like, you can be in a Saw movie, not necessarily like be in a trap or whatever, but you could just be in a Saw movie.
Right.
And she won, and she's made a nice little career out of this, like his repeated roles and stuff like that.
Nice.
I think she's great. I think she's fantastic.
But let's get back to the fat guy for a second.
Sure. He's great too.
I think part of what's so memorable about this as an opening sequence is just the concept of an overweight man sawing off his own flesh, right?
Yes.
Like, the way it's done is just like, I don't know, just as gross as you think it would be based on what you're looking at. But then the funny thing is, you think like you understand her predicament, like, oh, I'm a skinny, in shape woman. How the hell am I going to win this contest of a pound of flesh against this guy? And, her solution is to cut her arm off.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But I got to say, I have to suspend my disbelief there because I didn't buy that. Like this guy's using chunks of his like ample belly.
Yeah.
And then she's like, my arm. And the arm tips the scale way in her favor, of course. And she's the one that survives and a cattle plug or whatever goes into his brain and he's dead. But like, did you guys buy that? Did you buy that her arm weighed more than all of that like fat that he was throwing into the scale?
I did. I'm not a doctor, but I am a genius.
Oh, yeah.
And I just figured that with the bones and the muscles in there too, that probably made it like denser. I don't even know how weight works.
Yeah, the bones the bone is where I came down on that. I was like, maybe bones are a little bit heavier, but again, I'm not totally certain on that. For me, the best part of that trap, and I laughed each time it showed it, the little chute that made the flesh go down and then onto the scale. It looked like a cartoon to me.
Yeah, it made me think of those the things they have at construction sites.
Oh,
where
certainly.
You dump stuff in the dumpsters that I've always wanted to ride down.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I got a kick out of that. But then immediately, like as much as I do like this idea, but I couldn't help but be like, this doesn't seem like Jigsaw because you're pitting someone, you're pitting these people against each other in this weird way. Although it is still, who cherishes their life more, who's willing to sacrifice more.
Right.
It sets up a tone for the rest of this movie.
There's always this sense in every trap in this movie that like, here's people who deserve this, right? Like this is just unquestioned. They deserve this because these two are predatory lenders. And we'll talk later about, why the other people are evil and deserve this horrible, horrible fate that they're being subjected to. But like, it's a little laborious how the movie's constantly trying to make this case for like, well, shitty people deserve to be put in terrible traps and have to like be tortured. And yeah. That you're right. The whole Jigsaw philosophy is pretty much dead and gone at this point.
It's wildly changed from what it was before. I mean, let alone the fact that one of the first victims we ever see is a dude who defrauded an insurance company. That was Jigsaw's problem with him.
Oh, right.
And now Jigsaw is tearing down an entire insurance company.
Yeah, sure.
So whatever.
Yeah.
This time it's this one very much feels like a Law and Order ripped from the headlines. This was 2009. Obama is in office, starting the Affordable Health Care Act, his big piece of legislation. That's all in the news like that. And this feels like a reaction to that of like, well,
definitely.
People are mad at insurance companies. Why don't we make use of that?
Real death panels, you mean?
Yes.
I liked that though. I'm sensing that you don't like that aspect of it, but I actually do because I feel like in a movie this dumb anyway, that really only exists for cheap thrills and gross outs, I appreciate the attempt to at least like frame it with some meaning. I'm not saying I'm buying it. I don't think it's a convincing argument, but I just like that they made that effort to try to package all of this with a bit of a message of like, hey, it sucks that people have terrible health care.
Sure. My issue with it though is more just that it's Jigsaw that's doing it. And in light of everything else that he's done up until this point, it feels tacked on rather than like an actual thing, particularly because we've not to get too far ahead, but in part 4, he has this whole thing with Hoffman about how it can't be personal. It's nothing but personal here.
Oh yeah.
Every part is literally
personal. And like, it does fit with his ongoing thing of every problem is a personal problem. There aren't system wide or endemic problems. There's just individuals that are terrible. Like as soon as he kills this insurance guy, everything will be fixed.
Yeah.
But so that's at least consistent. But it just feels a little, when you're just tacking on hypocrisy after hypocrisy with Jigsaw's thing, it becomes to me a lot less interesting. If this is the first Saw movie I've seen, I'm sure I'd be on board with it. But by this point, I'm just kind of tired of his bullshit.
Which is kind of the point of the podcast, is to track how these things change over time.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is this one, particularly for the last one having such a disparate, like the whole other part of it, the trap side of the last movie felt so not connected to anything.
Yeah. I hate that about 5.
It was nice to have a running through line this time. So I did appreciate that bit.
We get a little recap of the end of the last film where Strom is getting smushed. So we get to see that makeup effect again, which I did enjoy that part in part 5.
Yes.
And so this does pick up immediately after the last movie, like a few of the other ones did.
Hoffman is just hosing Strom off the walls and just healing the corpse down the drain.
Right.
I love it.
That was great. A guy named Harold is being denied health coverage in an office space by one of our protagonists for the movie, Williams, who is checking the accuracy of the claim. And there's a whole group of people that go through and look at discrepancies on insurance records. The dog pit, yeah. And they really make a point of showing the glee that these people have when they find these discrepancies. Like there's fist bumps, there's like attaboys and stuff like that. And so you really get that sense of like, yeah, most of these people, to Michael's point earlier, we're supposed to really care that these people may die later on.
Well, I was excited to see Darius McCrary as one of them. He was Eddie Winslow on Family Matters. Is one of the dog.
There we go.
Pit. Okay. And it was like, because he's the big dumb galoot in that. So it was nice to see him be like this conniving asshole.
Right.
Like, oh, cool.
Totally. Hoffman goes to check out the murder scenes from the opening bit and sees Erickson there, Chief. I can't remember if he's actually a chief. I just always call him Chief. But Strom's fingerprints are on the eyelids of the guy's body, and Perez is actually alive. This was kept a secret.
All the Saw movies, kind of even the first one, they're really at their worst when they're trying to be like detective and cop shows. Mm-hmm. Because the cop stuff is so mishandled. It's so not interesting. And there's a lot of scenes in this movie where they're trying to create intrigue around like using fancy cop words that are just, pulled right out of
forensic
NCIS
stuff
or something.
Yeah.
Forensic vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so labored and it's so flat. All the shit about the fingerprints and the oils in the fingerprints, I was just like, oh my God, just move on, please.
I do enjoy though, like whenever Hoffman is in one of these scenes, like they just like linger the camera on him and he looks like the most guilty dude you've ever seen in the world. He's just like, can I get some more information on what you guys are like looking at?
In my notes for this, that was one of the things was like how Hoffman just every single scene is just wearing a hat that says villain, like, or a t-shirt that says bad guy right here, like he's so
just the shiftiest eyes
so
possible.
Obviously not, legit. And it's pretty embarrassing watching people treat him like a cop, asking his meaningful opinion on these like cop matters.
Right.
He's like, what? He's just a fucking brute standing there, like glowering.
Totally.
Like,
because, God forbid they give Hoffman some character.
Right.
Michael pointed this out to me, Jim. Do you know who plays Erickson, the chief?
I looked it up at one point. Who is it?
Drake.
It's Drake.
Yes,
Drake. That's it. Drake
from Aliens. Yeah.
Right.
As soon as you pointed that out to me, I can't not see it now, but it was hidden behind age, I guess.
And a mustache.
And a mustache.
Mustache.
Yeah.
He's a memorable character in Aliens, but he's not like part of the A-list of Aliens. He's not.
No, but I've just seen Aliens a ton.
Yeah.
And with this one, and we've talked about this in the last couple episodes, with this newer trilogy of 4, 5, and 6, this one leans so into being a soap opera.
Oh, yeah.
With the twists that happen and just like some of the dialogue feels like it. Like if I were an insane billionaire like Elon Musk, I would not have bought Twitter. I would have paid the Young and the Restless cast to just reenact this movie for me and shoot it in the same style as the Young and the Restless, which is like long pauses of. It's that same kind of drop. People that are dead are now back alive with Perez.
Exactly.
Turns out she's still around.
Yeah. Would Victor be Jigsaw? I mean, we got to go Victor as Kramer.
Yeah.
He's kind of world weary.
That'd be a tough call.
Yeah.
It'd be like, you know what I would do? Because I wouldn't want to lose Tobin Bell.
Sure.
I would do it like Tommy Wiseau style, where they would both be sitting next to each other. like he shot with cameras right next to each other.
Right.
And they would just say the lines at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that way you could figure out which one you preferred.
I had the exact same thought that there were multiple moments where I felt like I was watching a soap opera. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, especially with the box and that kind of thing.
I mean, like, and we talked before about how like, oh my God, what's in the note? And then when they finally get to what the note is, it's kind of a letdown and doesn't seem like it really matters. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of bigger reveals than this one that don't feel like they matter that much.
Sure.
It's also impossible to track John Kramer's wife's motives, what she's feeling, why she's doing anything she's doing. Like,
oh boy,
I can't.
She goes through the motions, like carrying the box around, opening the files, holding things like, ooh, this is important, something. And yet I never have a clue what she's thinking or why she's doing anything that she does. Never.
I think the idea that they eventually want you to have is that after losing her baby, after having the miscarriage.
In another soap opera scene.
Yes, it has driven her and John apart, but John is still hanging around, being a creep. When he shows up and says,
"These people
they will continue to hurt you and let you down.
They're addicts, John. Recovery is a process.
Maybe addiction's just part of human nature.
I have this foolproof way, and my proof is, here's Amanda. And Amanda shows, Shawnee Smith shows back up, which is nice.
Right.
His wife basically goes, oh, okay, so all like the training that I've had, all the studying that I've done, all the success stories I've had doing this stuff, my crazy husband, who's like become, completely unhinged after all that, has shown up with a previous client of mine who was very sort of abused and a drug addict, who's like, I'm totally fine now. Well, I'm sure he's right. It seems very out of left field, and it's, very convenient that now she's just completely on board, because for a lot of it, it doesn't fucking matter. He's dead.
Yes.
What's going to happen to you?
Yeah. They got into that scene in a little bit of one of those confusing ways too, if I remember correctly, where they did the like pan over and then it's like in a flashback with that harsh lighting. And I was like, wait a minute, is she just talking to Tobin Bell? And it took me a second to realize we're in flashback land. And that's one of those camera and editing techniques that they think that they're being arty and clever, but it's just kind of confusing.
It's mostly confusing.
Yeah.
You're because your brain immediately exits the movie and starts thinking about it as a movie and thinking, wait, are these ghosts? Wait, is it a flashback? I'm so confused. Like you have to start making sense of it on your own terms outside of the movie, and it was a stupid choice. Yeah.
And I don't always mind that. Like if it is something that you can appreciate the artistry of it or something like that, but it's not that clever.
Well, the one sequence, I can't remember which one it was, where they did the big reveal of the woman getting into the tub or getting out of the tub. I can't remember which one it was, but it is a really impressively done, like 15-second long uncut shot where they went into another room and stuff like that.
Yeah, it makes it more seem like time had passed and it was a transition where, this was just an attempt to do a fancy way to do a flashback.
Yeah.
But everything with Kramer's wife and some of the characters from previous movies was just totally time wasting. It was just filler. Total filler. It had no real point in being in the movie at all, and it doesn't like tick any of the boxes of why anyone on this planet would watch a Saw movie.
Right.
I'm still fascinated by because to me the draws of the stuff are the traps. That's why people keep them, and like there's some interest, but these again with this new trilogy, it's all just rehashing old stuff, and like there's no forward momentum with anything. Like, and so when Strom starts to figure out that it's Hoffman, it's like, well, that's kind of interesting, but it really only like matters in 5 seconds of the previous movie. And so having the proverbial trap kind of close around Hoffman in this, like that's where it gets kind of interesting, but it's just so much wheel spinning and looking back. And
I got to defend the movie for a second here then, because all we've really talked about is the soap opera nonsense and the parts that are totally boring, the bungled cop mystery stuff. But what I like about 6, and the reason I like it more than all the ones before it, except one, is that it really commits full time to the traps as like the major selling point, and it builds a whole fun house of them, just one after another. And I feel like they commit to creative trap design and just a flurry of them one after another in a way that is what I wanted 4 and 5 to do, and they didn't do. Like 4 and 5 take way too long around single traps that are like in big rooms and take forever before they have any kind of payoff, so that by the time the payoff happens, you're like inevitably disappointed. I love that 6 doesn't do that. 6 is just like, here's a trap and here's the stakes, and then okay, we're done with that one, on to the next one, here's a trap. It's literally just like an amusement park fun house ride of trap after trap after trap. And that's pretty much why I like this one, second best of the whole freaking franchise.
Yeah, the traps are certainly more interesting. There's also an element of like, so in the past, you have the Jigsaw traps, and then you start to learn that some of these traps you weren't supposed to get out of. And it turns out that's Amanda. And Amanda's kind of perverting his initial view. And then they went, okay, well, we wrap that up at the end of 3. And now we learn that Hoffman's the guy. But Hoffman himself has never really like made specific traps on his own, other than the pendulum one.
Hoffman is just a tool.
Exactly. He's an oaf, and so he's just doing what Jigsaw wants. So the natures of the traps are changing, but it's still Jigsaw doing it.
Right.
Which is strange.
First of all, 5 has Hoffman, so I'm sure you guys have already talked about Costas Mandalore in some detail without me. But so I don't want to rehash. I missed all those great steamy Costas Mandylor.
You want to start the Costas cast?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, he sucks. We can agree on that, right? Hoffman is a terrible character that never should have been put into this series.
Mm-hmm.
Hoffman is pretty vapid. Like, there's not much to him.
But I feel like there was a concept, at least for this one, I kind of forget how 5 plays out, but it's like they want you to believe that Jigsaw really still is the villain and is really like, you know, the sort of demonic figure in off in the ether controlling the show. And Hoffman's just like Grendel, right? He's just the beast on the ground. He's just there to be the destructive agent, the muscle, the goon. And he looks like a henchman and he acts like a henchman. He's just a goon. Yeah. And I think they could have done that better. They could have really played off this idea that you've just got the foot soldier on the ground who's going to do your bidding, and then the villain is still really the villain, but you don't even he can be dead, right? And that makes him seem even scarier and even more powerful that he's dead and he's not even there, but his legacy lives on and these things continue and he's got this Grendel-like foot soldier. The problem is that Costas Mandylor is such a terrible actor, and Hoffman is so ill-conceived of a character that they can't even manage to create any mystique around this concept, right? It just falls totally flat because just looking at his face, you just want to laugh.
Right.
Well, he's certainly like, yes, sweaty and pouty through a lot of it. You don't necessarily want to repeat the same dynamic that Jigsaw and Amanda have.
Sure.
Right.
But at the same time, you could have this guy who's, like, I'm just a brute. But I want to prove to you, not like out of any, with Amanda, they had this very complicated and like he was very sort of emotionally manipulative or whatever. But Hoffman having this more like, fuck you, dad kind of thing about it. Of this more like, that would explain him wanting to continue on, like, no, going to Jill and being like, I'm going to take control of what's in this box here, this next game, to show you that, to prove that I'm the better Jigsaw.
Right.
That would make some sense. And that's really not very well. If that's the intention, that's not well established. That's not what put out. It's more just like he's like, give me that. Okay.
Yeah. And there was a completely pointless flashback scene where he's like modifying one of Jigsaw's traps and Jigsaw like scolds him for it. Like, nope, that won't work. And he's like, ooh. And then he's like, next time consult me before you try to modify a trap. And they're trying to do some world building there with these relationships and this concept, but it just wasn't enough.
Right.
Yeah. Going back to like the Amanda stuff, their relationship and that exposing the flaws in his worldview was a more interesting idea rather than it just being, but what if we just piled more on? And made a less interesting guy.
I just can't take him seriously. There's no scene that Hoffman is in where I can take him seriously.
Well, there's just not a lot of motivation to it, because some of it does seem a little bit like ass covering. But like at no point, why doesn't he has this room that no one has found where he just gushed a guy between walls.
Sure.
Why not just shoot Perez and Erickson, gush him up there, heal him down a drain, boom, problem solved. Oh, I guess Jigsaw got him.
Right.
No one's going to be looking at you. I'm writing a different movie than what this one is.
It's called Goosh by Jesse Myers.
Goosh 2.
The villain 3D. Is the gusher, and it's just people getting gushed. It's all the gushing.
I immediately got sued by gushers.
No. Damn it. You even made purple stuff come out of them.
We should make a catalog of all the horror movies that have death scenes involving people getting gushed.
Right.
Just the gush.
Just
a super
gush only.
Would you say that the guy who gets rammed at RoboCop after the toxic waste, that's a prime gush?
That's a splat.
That's more of a splat. Yeah, that's
okay,
true.
fair. A gush is two things coming together, whereas a splat is a one thing, right?
Yeah.
So eventually our terrible insurance guy, he gets pig masked, kidnapped, and he wakes up in this gigantic trap. And for the first time, Kramer comes on the tape in this sequence. We haven't seen this before, correct? This was kind of a new addition.
Like not since Cecil has he been, hey, it's me, I'm doing this.
Right. Yeah. So,
you could argue he did it with Hoffman, but that seemed a little bit different than being on tape and doing it. Not Hoffman, Donnie Wahlberg.
Oh, right.
Yeah, whatever.
Like we see a few more people wake up, a teen boy and his mother wake up, and we kind of come and go from them throughout the movie. I'm not completely convinced on their kind of ending, but we'll obviously get to that.
I am.
Yeah.
The sleight of hand here, of course, is we are led to believe at this point that these are the wife and son of the insurance dude
Williams.
Who, you know,
because they see some video footage of other rooms. They're like in a cell in a locked room. And
you know, this gets my. I won't. Don't worry, Jim. I won't belabor this point, but this gets into that thing of like my Ocean's 11 complaint, right?
Oh, certainly.
This concept of the manipulation of twists isn't a part of, it's not diegetic, right? To use my favorite $20 word. It's not a part of the universe in which the characters live. It's only a part of the universe in which the audience lives and watches a particular edit of something.
Yeah.
So it's like the audience is fooled because it was edited this way, but it doesn't actually make any sense in terms of the people living in the world. It's not, you know, there. And it's just a pet peeve of mine because it's just to me a sign of bad writing when it's like, oh, we want to have a twist. We haven't even said what the twist is. We'll get to that later. But like, they want you to believe this is his wife and son. Obviously they're, you know, they're not, but you don't know that at the time, but you only don't know that because the movie was edited in a very specific way to make you not realize that.
That's been a routine issue with this, is that there are a plenty of twists and realizations that people are having just to show the audience, like to get the audience up to speed. Not that there would be like no way these people would actually know any of this stuff, but the important thing is that you get it.
It also like removes the primary motivation of our protagonist, even though he has a motivation that is like kind of family or kind of important to him, but it's less so than what the audience is led to believe, I think.
And even then, like it's asking a lot to try to in a movie that's you know, ostensibly like, hey, fuck the insurance industry, to be like, you know who you should root for to get through this? An insurance guy. You know, like I'm just waiting for him to die. It's not like a you know, any of those slashers or something where you're like, well, okay, yeah, these are all just disposable teens, but maybe this one's got a spark. It's like, nah, I really don't care about this.
Not at all. No.
I wasn't under the impression that the movie wanted us to care about him per se. Yes, he gets the screen time and he's the one traversing the maze of traps, but I always had the sense that, you know, we're not his friend, we're not his ally, we're just watching the story unfold, and then that it all comes together with the ending that we'll talk about later. But
but that's, I mean, I think that's part of the problem though, is because then with these traps you have him usually squaring off against someone or, you know, having to make a decision and I don't care. So it removes some of the tension from some of that.
Yes, in this first trap, he's set up with an oxygen mask on, and across from him is a janitor who committed the crime of smoking cigarettes. I personally have never been a cigarette smoker. However, I will not call that a crime to be murdered here. But, you know, the trap is set up so that, and I thought that this, you know, 6 movies in, this was a tad more innovative though. And it looked kind of cool with the mask coming off the face. But every time they drew a breath from here on out to steel things start to gush them from either side.
They get gushed.
They get gushed on either side. And it's basically...
This movie went over big with gush fans.
Yeah. Gush fan,
But it's essentially like, how long can you hold your breath?
The splat community was offended, though.
Unrepresented.
Yes.
It's terrible.
How long can you hold your breath in a panicked situation? And I kind of enjoy how quickly they just sort of dispatched with the janitor, because there was like a tad bit of tension at first, and then he's just like, screw it, just every 5 seconds I'm going to take a breath, and he gets gushed.
To me, it's another one of the little jokes in the movie, right? That this is a game, right? But it's a rigged game, and like it's hilarious. Like it's just like the opening one with the completely overweight guy versus the girl who, you know, the girl wins even though she's thin in a, you know, battle of pounds of flesh. But this is a similar sort of setup. They're like, here's a healthy guy and here's a smoker, and, you know, who's going to breathe the longest, who can hold their breath the longest? Like, it's completely a foregone conclusion who's going to win this one.
Right.
My particular favorite part of this is the way that this janitor character is introduced.
Oh, I know.
Is when you have like just the guy at his office doing stuff. At one point, he just walks by this janitor and is like, "Oh, hey there," and slaps him on the shoulder.
And he practically looks right at the camera.
Looks right at, and then it's like, well, this guy's going to die.
Right. And for what?
Well, and then, and so it's basically the trap is, can you hold your breath longer than an old man? Okay.
Yeah, that's the trap.
It was very, very silly.
But what's funny about it is you read it like the first one's a gimme, right? The first one's like, we don't really want you to fail on number one.
Right.
So we're gonna make this one a little on the easy side.
Yeah, that's where you cut to Jigsaw and Hoffman just being like, well, shit, he died on number one? I had a whole zoo set up.
What do we do with these other people? Well, screw them.
Yeah.
Let them make their choice.
Right.
Which is this one kind of, I think the game quality of it, the competition quality of the traps is a lot more just leaning heavily into like making a choice, because there's been very kind of iffy how the traps work in terms of like making a choice, and seems like they're just going to be dying anyway. So it seems like the choice is less, are you strong enough to save yourself, or, compared to fuck that guy.
Right.
You care more than that guy.
It's, again, something that I like about this movie compared to many, many, many of the other Saw movies, which is that there are stakes in these, whether you care about the people or not. I don't mean that kind of stakes, like you have an emotional investment in the characters, but like there is variable possible outcomes. There's a lot of scenes in this movie where this guy, the insurance guy, has to make a decision, and it will affect who lives and who dies. And because there's so much lip service paid to that concept of make a choice, this is the game, who lives, who dies. I like that there's actually moments in this one where it matters. He has to make a decision. We're going to talk about more of the traps later, where he makes very specific decisions that completely change the fate of different people.
Right.
We talked about how 5 mirrors 2. I think this kind of mirrors 3 in that way, where Jeff in 3 is constantly presented with, can you forgive these people? That your son is dead. Are you strong enough to forgive these people? Where in this one, it's kind of an inverse of it, in that it's like, are you strong enough do you have the will to live enough to let these people die? Do you have a stronger will to live? But it's also, unlike Jeff, there's a lot less of him standing there going, I don't know. Like the decisions are happening in real time. Like he's not just watching someone die and then at the last minute be like, well, okay. Like he's either actively a part of it or doing something that speeds or slows the process.
Yeah.
What do you think for the next trap? I thought they were trying to play it both ways a little bit in the next track, because I couldn't figure out how ambiguous it was, because in the next one, he stumbles into a room where there is a middle-aged woman with a family and kids and a young, healthy guy with no family, and it's basically like, which one are you going to kill? And they're on like a platform, and they've got barbed wire around their neck, and they're going to be hung, but he's holding on to 2 chains, and I couldn't tell if he just accidentally slipped and couldn't hold on to the one with the younger guy, or if he actually
I think he made a choice.
He made a choice there?
The play that they're doing here, as Jigsaw presents, is that this is based on the insurance guy's algorithm, right? It's saying that you would say that the young guy should live because he has the longer life expectancy than this woman who isn't very healthy, but, playing that against the fact that she has a family that loves her.
What does this have to do with the will to live? This is just, I mean, like they're these very complex, or I should say convoluted ways of going to make Jigsaw's overall point, because it is just like, see how you're choosing to let people live or die, but really you should be letting people who have the will to live stay alive. And it's like, well, that one trap had nothing to do with that. Yeah. And I was also very much enjoying, because the 2 people, as Michael said, is one is this older white lady, and one is this played by actor Sean Ahmed, just a darker skinned, a swarthier, younger man. And he lets that guy die. And I was hoping that the trap was that it would take a picture of him with the word racist underneath after he let that guy die, and then just let him go. It's like, that's it. Like you're at Six Flags and it's going down the log ride.
Right.
I said earlier, this is the funniest scene in the whole movie. And it totally is. And here's why. Because, again, the weird literalism of Jigsaw's presentation. He doesn't just have these 2 people there for Insurance Man to have to choose between one will hang, one won't, and he's holding the mechanism. There's like a whole photo reel for each of them, showing them, so that insurance guy really understands these people that he's making this choice about. And so for the woman, they show her with like beloved family, Christmas photos, like, gathered around the fire, whatever. And, look how loved she is. And then the best fucking part of the whole movie, in my opinion, is it keeps cutting to this other photo reel under the guy. And it's literally him like in an erectile dysfunction commercial where he's sitting on a park bench staring into the middle distance.
Right.
There's like a breeze ruffling his hair and he looks kind of sad.
Yep.
And then it cuts back to the horror scene where it's like, oh gosh, they're about to hang. And then it shows another picture of him and it's like, here he is standing alone on a bridge.
Yep.
Thinking about his loneliness.
Right.
And it's like, I was like, who took these photos? It was White Mask Var Myers is like, you are maidenless.
Yeah, I like the idea that Jigsaw is follow this guy around and like, this is too sad. I got to scrap this. Come up with a new plan. This guy is bumming me out.
I did enjoy in this scene though, where we get it's the first time in a while at least where Billy the Puppet is not on a video because he just comes slamming into the glass tank. And he's like kind of large and his mouth just like his marionette mouth starts talking. I thought that was actually pretty effective. I'm not going to say I jumped, but I was a little bit startled to see him hanging there.
It was cool, but it's also like, we already know it's you, John Kramer. Like, why are you using the puppet now?
Totally.
The better thing with the puppet is that shot later when I think they've done it before, but when it starts in profile and then turns its head to the camera.
I love that guy.
Oh, man.
Always the very dramatic reveal.
Mm-hmm. Another character that we've seen briefly earlier on is ace reporter Pamela Jenkins, and she wakes up in a cage. It's very similar to the mom and the kid. But what I really love about this is that Jigsaw is just pissed off at her for writing sensationalist articles about him without getting his message across, and that's why he's pissed at her.
Well, this is just pure. They had a concept for the end of this movie, but they were like thinking it didn't quite work, so they had to cram a whole new character into the movie just to try to make the end make more sense. Like there's no reason for this character to be in this movie.
Right.
Like the only reason she's there is because of the reveal at the end and how she plugs into it in a really stupid way. So.
Yeah, and it's also like, I don't know, quite the tell talking to Hoffman, and Hoffman's like,
Detective Hoffman, how about a quick word?
Pamela Jenkins, the resident Jigsaw sensationalist.
Just reporting the facts, Detective.
Is that what you're doing? John Kramer, conundrum of carnage.
why are you mad about that?
Right.
Like,
also, how can you sensationalize Jigsaw? Like, what would be the hard reporting versus the sensational? Like, we've been seeing the actual shit. What's the sensationalized version of this? What's the Fox News version or the New York Post? I would very much like to read her articles and her creative writing. Then we go into more flashbacks, and that's where we get Hoffman getting dressed down about preparing the rack in an incorrect way. But now we're back with William, and he's essentially in Freddy's boiler room, just in a basement covered with steam pipes. I thought this trap sequence was kind of cool in like almost like a video game sort of way, and it even
all the traps are cool in this movie. That's why
it's
so entertaining.
But there was one shot in this that like panned out just like an RE4 kind of like reveal.
It's Bowser's castle, basically.
it's Discovery Zone for creeps. Like it's great.
I was reading the Wikipedia entry on this movie. There's quotes from one of the designers on it, or the people designing the traps, and they're saying how elaborate this set was, like how this was like way beyond a lot of shit they'd ever done before.
I believe
Saw movies, and he's like, it had levels, like that is an interesting part of how it's filmed, right? You really see that like he's on the upper level, the other character they bring into it is on a level below him, but and this scene was really good because it had this really elaborate thing to pull off, but you actually understood the spatial relationship between the insurance dude and then the girl then enters the scene who's trapped below him, and how he's supposed to sort of guide her through the rat maze. I thought that was pretty cool. Like,
absolutely,
probably it's difficult to pull off.
Yeah, I thought it was very well done. And the idea here is that she's the attorney's lawyer, and you actually she has a line earlier in the movie where she says the thing about,
I have no doubt about that, but as lead counsel for this company, if you screw up, it comes down on my ass.
So it's basically like, I got to answer for your stuff.
Oh, yeah.
The thing is that she's got a device hooked to her that's going to blow up in 90 seconds, and she's got to crawl, like, you need to guide her through this maze, basically. There's all these, like, things shooting steam, and she hasn't yet unlocked the freeze grenades from Mr. Freeze. She finds out that there's levers on the top, but if he pulls them at certain points, it stops the steam from flowing out of the bottom ones and into top ones at him.
Yeah, so he gets blasted every time he tries to help her, which is great.
So good.
It's a great sequence.
It made me so mad because I'm like, I understand. I'm not going to be like, well, that's dumb. No one would do that, because I would absolutely make the same stupid decision. But it was very, very frustrating that he's never like, I wonder if there's a way I can do this without getting blasted in the face with hot steam. Probably not.
Probably
steam.
not. Yeah.
And I will say I like this. Like I said, with the being opposite of Jeff and him just making decisions, it reminded me a lot of the pervert kill in 4, where the guy, there's like, your choices, you can either lose your body or eyes. He's like, eyes, let's go.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like just snapshots, like, yep, got it, doing it. And they just stick with it. And I like that change anyway.
Yeah.
But
certainly.
he's like, yeah, I will just get blasted with steam to let her go. And like, then the pain will be too much to let go. She'll get burned a little bit, but he's able to get her through it. But
and I like the way they film that too. This constant trade-off of like, he's doing the best he can, but then he hits a point where the steam is blasting him and he can't tolerate it anymore. So he lets go. And then she gets blasted for a while not because he wanted her to, but just he couldn't hold it any longer. And it happens a couple times that way. It's pretty grueling and pretty effective.
But gets through it, and then in classic Jigsaw fashion, guess what? That's not it, because you have a key sewn into you. And then she's gonna have to get out with this power saw, and he, of course, isn't down with that.
Right. They go through this whole thing of teamwork, only to then completely flip it around, where she realizes, oh, the key is inside him, and Jigsaw has left me, the girl, with a power saw. So I love this sequence though, because the gate, they're separated by a gate, and then it like unlocks right as she is looking at an image that shows her where the key is.
Yep.
And she picks up the power saw, and then she just like dives out of there at him, and she is just the chainsaw lady from Resident Evil 4. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
Just full throttle goes for him. And it's another hilarious moment.
I'm not dying for you, or something like that.
The thing goes off, time runs out, goes off, shoots her, and a tremendous fall. Like, I actually really liked this stunt.
Yeah.
Because she falls off the balcony and like hits a thing and falls off. It's not as grandiose as everything else that's happened up to this point, but it was still like, that was a human body doing that. Congratulations. That was a good stunt.
Right. And the explosion isn't just an explosive device. It's a full on like loaded harpoon that shoots up through the bottom of her jaw. That's fun too.
It's like the nautical version of the Hoffman shotgun trap.
Right.
The only thing that bugs me about the trap is that there was clearly not enough time to do what they would need to do to succeed, even if she hadn't been like, oh, I'm just going to kill him and get the key. Like there was not enough time.
But that's like, I think that speaks to your issue with the sort of the non-diegetic twists, where there's so much of Jigsaw's who is that for? You know, if you're like, well, you didn't listen to my words exactly. Well, it's no longer about cherishing your life. It's listening to your clever little wordplay, isn't it? Like, and that gets a little frustrating, because it is that sort of layering of unnecessary layering of problems on the whole thing. But I do like that she would have still had to cut him open. Right. I still like, it doesn't fit with the teamwork thing, but I don't care. That's cool.
Yeah. Hoffman is getting called in by Drake and Perez to talk about the aforementioned bad forensics on the fingerprints, and that's so boring we're not even going to go into
endless babble about oils and fingerprints that prove the point that they all know that the fingerprints that were meant to be this what's his name, the gooshed guy was the one working for Jigsaw. Couldn't be, because his fingerprints on the crime scene were a dead man's fingerprints. They had dead person oil in them, the pH of a dead man. And, you know, you could say that and we would get it in like one line, but this movie decided to devote like 5 minutes of conversation to it.
Well, this was actually the tensest scene, I thought, in the whole thing, because they call Hoffman because they're like, hey, we have the audio tape that Strom had, which is weird. That how did they? I don't understand how they got that, I guess, first of all. But whatever, they have it. They're trying to decode it because they're pretty sure the voice isn't like Jigsaw. And so they go to the audio tech, and the audio tech is like, oh, I'm not quite there yet. We're picking up some stuff.
This.
Oh, are you doing audio work? Well, let's go ahead and have a big conversation right behind you. Oh my God.
Yeah.
As an editor, as someone who's on that is a nightmare, where it's like, I'm trying to do something. I'm trying to do some audio stuff and people are conversing around me. But to her credit, the technician is just like, no, this is fine. I'm used to this.
Mm-hmm.
And then she gets shot by the cop who can't tell the difference between shooting the obvious bad guy goon and shooting the innocent person right in front of him.
Right.
Well, it was dark.
Right. Well, there is.
So you fire blindly until someone falls. That's police training.
Right. There is a fun thing with that, though, backing up slightly before he goes nuts, where She says,
We have some tricks of our own here. We can turn his algorithm upside down and let us hear what he really sounds like.
I want to be like, that's how you do this?
That's speaking of tech babble.
Yeah, like, Michael, is that how you write music? You just turn the algorithm upside down?
Also, you just flip it.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, that did make me laugh, but I will admit that I thought that even though it's goofy, that there's two conversations going on at this point between the other three, and then the audio person's just gradually saying like, "Oh, I'm getting closer to decoding this."
I'm flipping the algorithm.
Yeah, that tension did kind of work for me because I was like, I thought like, is Hoffman just going to slaughter all these people? Like, what's his way out? And then he did.
But that's why it doesn't work for me, because it's just this foregone conclusion the entire time of like, these are the dumbest detectives on the planet who still are pussyfooting around the idea that Hoffman may or may not be the bad guy. And they clearly know it even before the audio gets
That's
cleared.
the frustrating part.
They really play it like they already know, but yet we have to wait. So if the audio revealing his voice, Hoffman's voice, is supposed to be the cue for a big aha moment.
Yeah.
Why did they write it like the cops already know that Hoffman's the bad guy? And then if they know, why are they so unprepared to handle this situation?
That's part of it, sure.
He kicks their ass. Like there's three of them and he wipes the floor with them.
I will say that I liked it only in that it was in more of a relief way of just like, okay, now we have to move things forward.
There you go.
Just be like,
it is the breaking point.
Keep looking back at the same two movies. Things have to progress.
I liked it from the point of view too of we get a little bit of a mini slasher movie in here instead of just a movie that's all about the traps. We get a little slasher here. Like he takes out three cops in the basement with a little scalpel.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's part of a larger problem though, is that like that's Hoffman.
Oh, sure.
That Hoffman, is a hench. He's a man of action. And so putting him in charge of all these intricate traps, is that such a great idea? This is what he does best.
Brute force here.
Yeah. But he doesn't bust through doors. That's the important thing. We learned that in 4. Don't bust through doors.
If we're gonna make a Saw movie, let's make it about the evils of the insurance business rather than just putting a guy to task who kicks down doors.
But I kind of like the idea that of John Kramer as this curmudgeon that he's just like, this is what he got mad at in the paper this week. So this is what he's basing all his traps around. It was like, well, these cops are reckless. We got to focus on this. I just read this article about insurance.
Yeah.
Time to kill everybody.
Right. It's the
totally.
Fox News
but
version.
The next Saw movie is about like, bad baseball managers, and it's like baseball managers being put in traps because John Kramer read an article about the Yankees that pissed him off.
Right.
Yeah. The fuck is going on with the Mets this year?
Sunday morning quarterback.
or like
Monday
referees
morning.
in the NBA need to pay.
Yeah.
Right.
Back at the aquarium, we've got the final big set piece trap with Williams going through the door, and they bring back the spiral motif here, and he goes through the door. And there are 6 people strapped to a carousel that starts spinning, and this is our dog pit. And essentially, he can decide which of the 6. Only 2 can survive. So
there's a gun.
The shotgun.
Right? There's a shotgun
Yeah.
that's pointed at the carousel. The carousel is going to stop, and the shotgun has to fire 6 times. But 2 of those times, he can make it miss.
Yeah.
Yeah. By putting his hand in a thing and like getting glomped on by
and this is again
blood on his hands,
where the writing is good, because there are stakes to this sequence, and even if he makes, I guess it's sort of an obvious choice, but it's like there's no good choice here, right?
Sure,
it's just a choice, but it's not. There's no right or wrong choice. But I just appreciate that, like, it means something, right? There's these people here, and their fate is about to be decided, and it's gruesome. It's a really gruesome. Effectively gruesome sequence.
But it was driving me nuts because I was thinking about the last one, how Julie Benz's character is like taking all the keys, like, I'm being smart, I'm getting prepared. And there's no reason this guy would do it, but it's just like, this seems like you could easily circumvent this trap if you just had like a stick you could put in there.
Just something.
But he's not equipped. He doesn't, his inventory is empty.
He has one trick up his sleeve, which is that he reuses the damaged hand. Like the thing punctures his hand when he makes the shot miss to save someone. And then the second time he does it, he reuses the punctured hand rather than like his other one.
A fresh hand.
About as far as he can get in helping himself out.
And I do like, and I'm sorry, and I don't know the actor's name that does it, but the last man to go down. Like he ends up saving two of the women, kills Family Matters guy. But like the last guy goes down is like, you piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like he just like calls him out and then just like, look at me. Look, you did this. And I kind of like that you made this stupid choice and I have to suffer for it. For what you did.
Right.
Go to hell, man.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's related to the formula that has been mentioned throughout the film where, 2/3 of the people will die. You can save just 1/3 of the people. The power is in your hands.
But it's also like, I think a thing I find frustrating about that too is just, but it fits into Jigsaw's whole thing. Is that Jigsaw seems to pretend that all these things are happening as a result of individual actors. Right. And it's like, yes, that guy did make a algorithm that tells you whether or not you should give people insurance. You know who else does that? Every other insurance company. Yep. Whatever. Yeah. So it's like putting these individual onus on these guy. Like if this guy went, well, I'm going to stop doing that would change everything. Is dumb. But it's also Jigsaw doesn't care about that. He just wants to punish people, as is increasingly evident by his
Sure.
The acting of the people on the carousel is pretty good. They play it pretty straight and pretty effectively for this horrific situation they're in, and I just appreciate that. The scene could have lost a lot of its dramatic and gruesome potential if you didn't buy that those people really believed that they were there and about to die. Yeah. And they did a good job. So
really, this was just a test for James, because it is just, here's a scene of people yelling for 10 minutes or however long.
I did think about that, but the way that circumvented a little bit was it cracked me up how quickly they all broke down and hated each other and were just kind of like lobbying him.
Immediately, yeah.
What do you mean, okay, my parents are sick, okay, they need me, I'm all they have.
You're fucking lying, your parents hate you, they cut you off! What? You and this truck, sit next to you!
Like that kind of stuff was great. It was really funny, but it still stuck with what you were saying, because I still believe that they were there and they would use those kind of things as like evidence or ammunition to stay alive.
And trivia, the carousel is the longest trap sequence of them all.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I also read that initially it was going to be 10 people, which that's a lot.
That would have taken.
That would have been overkill.
They really do. They don't cut any time in that sequence. They let the whole thing play out through the 6 shots that it has to fire. So
they actually let the tension play out, which has been an issue with me in a lot of the traps, is that it's all just like quick cuts like that. But yeah, they let this one go all the way.
Yep.
And I think we should mention at this point that we've sort of danced around it, but we find out that eventually the reason Jigsaw is so against this guy is that he met him before, and the guy mentioned to Jigsaw that at like a opening party for the Cherish Your Life facility, whatever. The guy's like, yeah, I make this algorithm that decides, whether we can afford to give you, or it makes sense to pay your insurance claim, whether or not you're going to die. And John, of course, has a problem with that because you're taking out the will to live. And then he goes to him later after his cancer diagnosis and says, hey, there's this experimental Dutch therapy I could get.
Cancer treatment.
Yeah. Why don't you pay for that? And, I got rejected. Why don't you let me? The guy's like, I'm sorry. That's not going to happen. This must have been before the suicide, because he's still trying to retain his own life. And it's just my own biases coming through that, you have the ear of the head of this company, and you like are powerful enough that, he's been to some, you're not just some schmo, that, he could do you something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's probably why he's mad. It's like, you didn't give me the cool rich guy pass.
Right. There you go.
I was on the cover of Civil Engineering, Dan.
Sure.
And Tobin Bell is really good in this scene, as he always is. Like he's an excellent performer, and it's the weird thing about them killing him in the third movie, because this movie really does try to give him a fair amount of screen presence and give him a lot of lines, and it's better for it because he lights up the movie in a way that no one else knows how to.
Yeah, I mean, he's saying some dumb stuff, but you're on board because he's got a presence. So basically, like after those people die, and then the stuff with Hoffman happens, after he kills them, he comes back to the observation room he was in. He finds Jill has been in there and has left the letter he wrote to Amanda, the note from the end of Saw 3.
Yes.
They waited multiple movies for this.
Waited or didn't know what to do with it until now.
Yeah, it's clearly that one. Because it's that Hoffman was blackmailing Amanda and said, hey, I know that you actually goaded Cecil into doing the robbery that ended up killing the unborn baby. And if you don't,
guys, you're losing your audience on it. Just skip it. Just fast forward.
Why would what would that have done exactly?
Yeah.
Like what would, he's already made Amanda pass these tests and cherish her life. Would he have turned around? I don't necessarily buy that he would have turned around and been like, oh, well, I don't like, unless she said, go in there and get that baby. I don't think that has a whole lot of weight to it. Like, and then like the fact that Jill, it just dovetails with Jill still being involved in any of this, where it's like, who cares? Like he's dead. What are you trying to do here?
Because final wishes.
Yeah. Because it turns out she gets the drop on Hoffman.
Yeah.
And what we find is that in the box were the 5 envelopes, which were the people in the trap that we've been watching the whole time. And the 6th envelope, which she kept, which was Hoffman. So she ties him to a chair, and also in the box, the bear trap.
Right.
Puts that on him. Okay, this is going to fulfill John's will and kill Hoffman. And I do like how he gets out.
I was going to say that. Yeah. I was like, I'll defend that part of this whole dumb sequence.
It is evidence of his just brute forceness that he just uses it to slam onto his hand to break his thumb, get it out of the restraints, and then breaks the window. There's bars on the window and uses it to stop the trap from breaking shoves the face part under it, stops it from opening too much, and is able to get it off.
I had questions about that because one thing, usually bars on windows like that are vertical, not horizontal. So that's a little convenient that there's horizontal bars on this window so that he could fit the bear trap into it. Right. But then I thought at first like, oh, it already went off and this plan worked because it went off in the window between the bars, right? Preventing it from opening too far and killing him. But it clearly goes off later. So that wasn't the case. He sticks it into the bars in the window, tears himself out of it. After he tears himself out of it, then it clearly goes off. Yeah. In the window. So I'm like, oh, okay. So he was using the window bars for leverage to tear himself out of it.
Basically, yeah.
And it rips his cheek off and it's gross.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
And the last shot of the movie is him like howling like a werewolf with his cheek all torn up.
Yeah.
I like the Wikipedia entry on this because it's just, they summarize movies, but it's just written in this like just very plain speech. And it's like, he endures damage to his right cheek while escaping from the trap.
Right. Yeah.
The end.
Well, ChatGPT. There you go.
But I think it's great because he survived. He's got this vendetta against Jill and nothing else. What's left?
And I don't think any of this ever appears again. I could be wrong because it's been so long since I've seen 3D, but I think that's it.
It wouldn't surprise me because there's a lot of stuff that gets kind of tossed by the wayside.
We should probably jump back though to the fate of the insurance man.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Sorry. I got very excited to talk about this stupid thing because I also don't care what happens to it. So
this is where we get the big reveal that we were talking about earlier, where the insurance man arrives in between these two cages, looks to his left, sees the mom and the kid, looks to who we presume that he's excited to see, looks to his right and sees ace journalist Pamela Jenkins, and his affection goes right to her. And it is revealed that the mom and the kid are the actual wife and kid of the guy from the opening sequence that he denied insurance coverage for.
Who died. Yeah. This only makes sense because of
the editing.
Spliced editing of showing us flashbacks to be like, oh, that's whose dad, that's the dad of this kid and the husband of this woman.
Right.
Like they could have showed that to us at any point in the movie. They just chose to show that flashback to us at this point in the movie. Yeah. Meaning that the elements of twist here don't work for anyone. Like the insurance guy goes through this entire maze trap knowing that he has no wife and kid. We just don't know that. And I hate that, right? Because if you want to put the audience there with the person in the event, we need to know what they know. And instead, this movie's like, no, you don't get to know what they know.
Right.
He knows that he has a sister, not a wife and a kid. And then, of course, he runs up to the reporter and they do this flashback where like they had talked on the phone earlier and she's like, you're going to miss your own sister's birthday?
Right.
Ha, you don't have any other family.
Yeah.
And you realize this is all this ridiculous bending over backwards just because Jigsaw makes the statement like, you'll never see your family again.
Exactly.
they put the whole journalist in just because Jigsaw says that.
Yeah, and it was just such a of a reveal. Because when they do the reveal, like, when he was talking on the phone before, that was to his sister.
Yeah.
Who's the journalist?
Wow.
Wow. Great.
Yeah.
The only thing that matters about it is then it's about the mom and the son getting to decide the insurance man's fate. And they have this corny line where the insurance guy says, "It wasn't my game after all."
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't my game all along.
Right.
Like, well, okay, that's patently not true.
Sure.
You just went through a ton of games with your entire staff, right?
Yeah.
But the final puzzle, the final game is not his decision to make. It's their decision to make. The mom can't do it, but then the son can. And he makes a bunch of hydrofluoric needles pierce Duder. And
it apparently, like, hydrofluoric acid, which is what they used in Breaking Bad to dissolve the bodies. Part of the problem, part of the thing is like it like fucks up your nerves. So you're like, when it's burning you, you're like, well, I don't necessarily, no, I'm fine.
Oh,
but it's really just fucking you up. So it's like, would it hurt that bad?
Right.
I didn't want to find out. I mean, I'm going to take your word for it.
Exactly.
But it's also, it's frustrating because you remember how the whole thing in part 3 was, hey, it's bad to murder people, and how, he's mad at Hoffman for murdering people and mad at Amanda for murdering people. But at the end of this is like, you should probably murder this guy. Fine, whatever. I'm just so tired of like
giving him the choice,
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait till the next movie to see if they suffer for that choice. My guess is that they don't.
Right.
I am losing my ability to sanction Jigsaw's buffoonery.
Yeah, right.
It's getting a little too convoluted.
Yeah.
And it worked for the first 3 movies, but you're losing me.
He did have a good goopy death scene though, where the bottom half of him kind of falls apart. Yeah.
Yeah. It was very like street trash where he's just like melting.
Yeah.
It was always a fan of a body melting. So definitely credit where credit's due there.
I thought it was funny that they don't show the reporter's sister again. Like, it's just a weird editing choice where they show, the boy makes the decision to kill the guy. Like, you killed my dad, rotten hell kind of speech, right? And then he pulls it, and then he and mom embrace each other and scream as they watch this gruesome death, and the insurance guy dies. Through all of this, they never show the sister again. Even though she's literally right there, she's done. Her purpose is done.
But she's going to write the best damn article.
It might be a little sensational.
It'll be sensational, yeah. It'll miss the nuances of that guy's body melting.
Yeah. Yes. I did enjoy like the last little bits. Like, of course, like all Saw movies, it has to end in like 5 minutes of flashback footage, which gets dizzying and like kind of boring or hard to follow or something. But I did kind of like it when they just kept saying like, it's policy, John. And that kind of cracked me up a little bit. But overall,
it's definitely this very like low hanging fruit.
Sure.
People that we don't like because they do bad things, but it's policy. But yeah, I at least like that it had a theme. I think that's what endears itself to me about it. Is it may be a stupid theme, but at least it has a theme.
Yeah.
At least it has like a sort of Tootsie center that it's revolving around.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny. I don't know, with his whole thing going from this sort of mysterious, like, arbiter of punishment to in 4 and 5, a little bit more of a reactionary libertarian Bernie Getz kind of guy. Like, I'm going to make these people suffer because they can't fix themselves, to the sort of populist hero of 6 of like, I'm doing the work for the people of fighting against insurance. Although it's still, like I said, it still fits him being this. It's because what they did to me, not what they did to other people, but really it's because of what they did to me.
Let's honor our dead real quick, and then we can come back and wrap this thing up. Eddie, played by Marty Moreau, temples drilled. Hank, played by Jerry Mendicino, ribcage crushed by vice. Alan, played by Sean Ahmed, hung by barbed wire noose. Debbie, played by Carolyn Cave, forehead impaled by spikes. Aaron, played by James Gilbert, shot by shotgun carousel. Gina, played by Melanie Scarafino, shot by shotgun carousel. Dave, played by Darius McCrary, also shot by shotgun carousel. Josh, played by Sean Matheson, you guessed it, shot by shotgun carousel. Agent Dan Erickson, played by Mark Rolston, stabbed in the neck with a knife. Sachi, played by Ginger Bush, shot in the back 3 times. Agent Lindsay Perez, played by Arthena Karakinis, stabbed 6 times in the stomach. William Easton, played by Peter Outerbridge, melted in half by hydrofluoric acid. A higher body count than usual, I think. I can't remember the exact numbers. But what was your question right as we were going out?
Oh, just if in watching all of these Saw movies, if you have found Charlie Clouser's contributions, the scoring, memorable at all.
I was thinking earlier today that like I cannot wait to no longer have the Hello Zepp reveal song out of my head, because it's either that one or it's like the incidental tense music that sounds like you're on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Yeah.
Where it's like that doon doon doon. And so that gets stuck in my head a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess.
I mean, I feel like I like Charlie Clouser and he's a nice guy. He's actually a regular on the Gearspace forum and people ask him, all their crazy Trent Reznor questions.
Nice.
And he's he writes like paragraphs and paragraphs and he's done this for years, which honestly, like, why?
Yeah.
It's an internet forum for music gear dorks.
Yeah.
But whatever, maybe he enjoys it, it's fine.
Sure.
I have done equally dubious pursuits. So
thank you for coming on the podcast.
the main answer to all this is just that he gets a nice paycheck for each one of these, right? And I understand that. I'm sure he gets a handsome paycheck for each Saw soundtrack. But the funny thing to me, at least as a musician, like I can't tell any of the music apart in any of these movies.
No.
And it makes me think about this whole, incoming AI stuff going on, and there already are musical chat GPTs, right? And it's just going to be a thing that's going to happen more and more. But it's like, I want to believe like, no, movies need original scores by creative people who are going to make great music for it. But then I watch Saw 6 and I hear Charlie Clouser's 6th Saw score and I'm like, nah, they should just have a computer like this, because honestly,
it's fine.
No one's going to care, and no one is going to notice the difference because it's just the same beats every time. And I don't mean literal beats. I just mean, the same concept just played out for every type of moment that there is. It's so by the book and it's so boilerplate that you might as well have it automated. Like it doesn't matter. There's nothing distinct. Also, Saw, for having 9 movies and a 10th one coming out this year, doesn't have a distinctive theme. And that pisses me off too, because horror movies used to be all about having a distinctive theme.
Well,
Freddy,
wouldn't it be
if they do, it's the one at the end.
Yeah.
But I know what you're getting at, but like it's you just wait to hear it's basically the hey, the movie's about to be over song.
Okay,
which
fair,
is
fair. I'll grant that I'm wrong there, because you're right. That is memorable, and people probably do know that as Saw music. So you got me on that one. But
I do agree though that like even going back to again Friday the 13th and Harry Manfredini, which this might be the first time I actually said his name right on the podcast. So I'd like to pat myself on the back for that.
Manfredini.
But like there are different scores for the different ones that he's done. Like there's enough like this. He's got some of the same themes or whatever. But like look at the disco score for the start of part 3. And I think part of that is the fact that this series, this franchise is so like micromanaged in the sense that there's this Saw Bible. This is the way the show has to go. That I think you're tied into like, you're not going to be able to do anything different. You're going to be, and I think that's sort of what they want. It's like, can we just press a button? And
he probably is someone who is absolutely talented enough to come up with some cool new ideas that would feel distinct per movie, and I'm sure that they would just be rejected outright, and they'd be like, no, we just use the thing that sounds like a Ford commercial where we show a truck on the side of a mountain,
right. Just give me a slight variation on ominous tones. That's all I want.
Use the stems from 3 and 4.
Although this one apparently does have more metal in it.
Yes,
on the soundtrack.
There's a Hatebreed song.
I was reading about all the songs that were used for the soundtrack, and I was like, wow, I didn't register any of those during the movie.
Right.
Like it just did not connect at all. That there was like
it makes you wonder
songs.
if they were really one of the if it's one of those where it's like music from and inspired by.
Right, totally.
Like, I remember like being disappointed that I couldn't get a Terminator 2 soundtrack that had both the Guns N' Roses song and the score.
Yeah, right. Yes. So the sixth movie in to start to wrap this up. Favorite trap from this one?
That's tough. I might go with Carousel Trap, just because it was sort of what I wanted out of a Saw movie trap, where it's these decisions are happening, you're watching it play out, the tension of making decisions, and you're actually seeing like the ramifications, the emotional
it's clearly
stuff
the best one.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's pretty much fan agreement on that. I don't think.
I mean, there's some great traps in this, but I do like that one.
Yeah.
It's the best as a trap, although the steam room is definitely the second best.
I would say.
But, lonely Viagra boy, Mr. Maidenless guy, all the snapshots.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
Funniest trap.
Funniest trap, yeah.
Good job, Jigsaw. Good thing you cataloged this poor man's life for 6 months. What if he hadn't been lonely? Like, how would you set up this trap if that guy... Because that guy worked at the insurance office,
Well, he'd
right?
pick a different lonely boy, probably.
Yeah, he'd find a different lonely guy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, he just brings this guy in. And he's like, well, okay, so on one hand, you have this woman who's been working with you forever, and she's got a wife and kids, and this other guy, well, he sucks and is lonely. And I've also brought in his high school girlfriend to laugh at his penis. Who are you going to choose?
I hear he sits alone at night watching horror movies by himself in preparation for a podcast.
What a loser.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I feel like we talked a lot of trash on this one, but I have to agree, this is the best one in quite a while. Yeah. And my goodness, I liked it so much more than 5. So
five blows.
I will mark this down as like, I would totally recommend this movie. Actually,
as far as like my issues with it sort of lie in the overall Saw universe. And I think there is some unforgivably soap opera and dumb stuff in there.
Totally.
But if you're going to sit down and watch a Saw movie, just picking this one is not a bad movie.
Exactly. Yeah.
It gives you what you want out of a Saw movie,
I agree with all of that. One other point I want to make or bring up and discuss, even though we should probably be done by now, is there's a scene, the same scene with the choosing between the woman and the guy, the lonely guy. It pays a little more attention to something that the rest of the scenes don't, which is what happens afterward, because the guy gets hung and then the woman's like, thank you. And then they take the time. They don't have to. Yeah. They take the time to have the insurance man say to her, like, look, I have to keep doing this crazy game. I can't help you any further, but try to find a way out. Yeah. And that line is so funny to me because she's still standing on this precarious little platform that if she steps off of, she will be hung by barbed wire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, try to find a way out.
Yeah. It's like
not my problem anymore.
The over under on her actually doing that. I don't know. Not too good.
This brings up major questions to me about there's 2 carousel survivors as well. Right. And then there's this woman is a survivor. And it's like, did Jigsaw, how elaborate is this puzzle? Like, did Jigsaw put in exits for them? Yeah. Like, are they really going to just kind of like be like, oh,
like,
well, now I just walk to this exit door.
In theory, Hoffman's there observing. So in theory, I guess he would just go in and free them, but he's been otherwise occupied. Sure. So who knows?
Yeah. That's where he's just like, I got to get back, guys. I've got a stopwatch going, remember?
Yeah, there's an old lady on a plank I got to go see about.
I think mostly, though, because, again, this one just has stakes to the traps and has a sense of, like, it matters what you do in a way that a lot of the ones from here on out just don't. Maybe 7 isn't as bad as that as 8 and 9, but 8 and 9 are really bad.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, while I don't like these people or really care what happens to them, I think it's put together in a thoughtful enough way. In the moment, there's still some stuff, which I think is why I like that spinny trap, because it's very upsetting.
Yes, it's very upsetting, and there's still fun to be had. Is what you're saying?
A good time,
it's still a good time.
Yeah,
watching these people get shotgun blasted.
At least 2 people had a great time.
Right. All right, Michael. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Saw 6, your first time back since Phantasm 2. So anybody new to the podcast, you want to hear Michael babble on about a movie that he probably likes better than Saw 6.
Oh my God, yes.
The absolutely wonderful Phantasm Part 2.
1,000 times, yes, better.
But what have you got going on? Where can people find your music, or if you want to point them to any direction online?
Thank you. Yeah, check out michaelarthurholloway.bandcamp.com. Always want to direct people to Bandcamp. That's the best place to support artists and find cool new music. So yeah, Michael Arthur Holloway. There's a couple albums on there and video game soundtrack and spooky, slow, dark, noir influenced doom jazz music.
Hell yeah.
Nice. And what's going on over at John Alex Hate Stuff?
We just did a very goofball 80s action movie called Unmasking the Idol, which is a sequel to a very early episode we did for a movie called Order of the Black Eagle. So that was a lot of fun to chat about.
And if you like short, original horror stories, check out Please Leave podcast over wherever you find your podcasts. And thanks everybody for listening along. And we will see you next time for Saw 3D in a couple of weeks. And if you like that one, or if you like Saw 6, let us know, please. Like we say, we're always happy to hear if people are digging these. And I know a lot of people are really into these.
Hey, does the
movies.
3D carry over to watching it at home? Can you still get the 3D?
The way I watch it, yeah. I just sit there with a knife in front of my eye.
Yeah, there might have been a 3D release, but in general, no.
Mm-hmm.
You just get to imagine.
Damn. All right. Well, we will look forward to Saw 3D with everybody in a couple of weeks. But for now, good night.
Good night.
This has been a Two Penguins media production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at thismayhurtabitpod and on Twitter at hurtabit. Email us at thismayhurtabit@gmail.com. And if you are so inclined, rate and review us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.